I have a few games today. I basically have a lesson against how to play against hypermodern openings and how to play, and then basically five viewer games after that. I was just looking. There's a few different, basically the hypermodern games are a kind of consistent idea. I think I sort of wanted to outline first what the modern is. Basically, modern and perk are two very similar openings. Generally, the modern has no knight to f6, but the perk, or sorry, the modern has no knight to f6, but the perk includes knight to f6. So overall, it's basically a pretty passive opening. It involves white establishing a big center, moves like e4 to d6 and d4 to g6. White will end up with a good center position. It's kind of a passive way for black to be playing, with black basically playing, with the flank. White gets to establish the center that he's basically interested in having. He can set up the bishop on c4. He can set up the other bishop on e3, and he can get clean development with the space advantage and center control. So overall, I guess I would say I'm not a huge fan of the modern opening as black. It was one of those things where at one point I was interested in trying it because I thought it had some value as kind of an unorthodox opening for black. But basically, after having played it for a while, the positions that you get out of the modern opening tend to be fairly constricted. Not particularly, not particularly good, and basically white has consistent attacking chances. I was seeing a lot of, basically seeing a lot of attacks and fairly limited number of, overextensions. Basically, black is playing for an overextension by white. Playing an opening with the idea of your opponent making an error tends to be kind of a risky play. I mean, among other things, what happens if your opponent doesn't make an error, right? But in any case, e4 going up against d6 and d4 going up against g6 gives white control of the center. Black has to decide whether he wants to transpose it into a perk or not with knight to f6. Basically, white will end up in a situation where he can comfortably play c4, f4, knight f3, knight c3, and big center basically. I have a few games where white was able to successfully break through the modern structures. So hey, thank you very much for the follow call. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining. These are two Grandmaster level games. The first one was Burger versus Suttles, which is an old game, very high level Grandmasters in the 1960s. So basically, white's gonna do things like push aggressively, basically secure the center and then push aggressively towards the king side. These games are both games. The two games that I have in mind here are games where these king side attacks worked, and I think they demonstrate some of the shortcomings of these openings. So this one comes with a very early e6. I think. Hey, welcome, Elliot. Thank you very much for joining the stream. So basically, this idea is an early way to break the defense of this bishop onto knight to g4. With this advancing e5, e6 in the center, you can play moves like knight to g5 and just sort of extend your attack. But in terms of actual, compensation here for this pawn, white is showing a solid positive here. We can take a look at the opening tree. The strongest move here for white is knight to g5. I would guess that this specific game is probably already in the opening book. Like, I think that this is a Grandmaster game that would appear in this high level opening book. So I may be referencing this game specifically when I'm looking at different theories here. But on e5, knight to g4 is the most common, and then e6 is the most common. This is an interesting line. This is basically, I guess this is, I think, called the Austrian attack against the perk, but it's generally pretty dangerous, and it has an opportunity for black to make errors and for white to secure a quick win. The most common move here is bishop takes b5, but f takes was played in this game. Knight g5, bishop takes. And then here's kind of the interesting defining move of this game. This is fairly well explored theory at this point. If you look at this game, knight takes e6 tends to be a win, or tends to be a draw. Look at just the breakdown. I thought this was kind of interesting when I was looking at this. Basically, knight takes e6 leads to a draw, which is interesting. It's 11% winning chances for white and 85% drawing chances out of 136 games. So it's not as if it's a small scale concept. We can look at the draw here. Knight takes, knight takes, bishop f2, and basically it leads to this draw, right? This is one of those pre-made grandmaster draws. That's something that sort of exists. Basically, if grandmasters are interested in drawing each other, sometimes they will intentionally play into openings like this, knowing that this is likely to be a draw. But this is this has been played in 84 games, so it's really a opening theory in which there's been a fair establishment of this as the basically as a known grandmaster draw. Anyways, so that's one way that this can go. But the other alternatives, so knight takes e6 leads to that draw. Knight takes b5 has better winning chances for white. This is kind of an interesting position. The position's close to equal. c3 here and basically pressure along this knight on g5 and also pressure on the e6 square. But overall, white's looking pretty good. Knight takes, queen takes, and white's looking fine. No problems, I don't think. And knight takes g7 can safely be played, king f7. But overall, this is a relatively equal, very asymmetrical game for white. So let's go back to the actual game. I showed the forced draw. That's mainly what I wanted to show in going into the sidelines. But yeah, e6 can be played here, and on e6, white's looking better. This is just fine, and this is the game. So there were three opportunities here, which were knight takes e6 leading to that forced draw, knight takes b5 getting followed up with queen a5 and c3, or queen takes g4. Queen takes g4 is the least common one, but the one played in this game. Hey, welcome R Paradox. But yeah, so basically the point of this the point of this game is that white ends up in a situation in which white basically ends up in a situation in which they're either going to draw in the forced draw line or have fairly good winning chances after queen to g4. This particular game, white goes into the queen g4 line and basically destroys black's king side and is able to play moves like queen to g6 and then f5, rook e4, and checkmate on the king side. So yeah, overall I think this is pretty good. I think rook to h3 is solid, and very interesting stuff. White basically secures a mate in 8. The game was resigned at this point, but it's pretty clearly a win. Best defensive play here is bishop to g7. But just going front to back on this, we can kind of look at e6 as being an aggressive and committal move for white. Queen takes g4 is the follow-up, and good win for white. Basically breaks open the king side and gives a good example of kind of an aggressive play for white against the modern. Another hyper-aggressive game. I picked two hyper-aggressive games because they're interesting, but I felt like they show shortcomings of the modern. This one is kind of interesting. White sets up this good centralized pawn structure, d4, e4, and f4. On bishop to f4, you're going to have threats on f7. So knight takes, bishop takes f7, king takes f7, knight takes d4. And, this is an interesting position because, usually those types of, 2 knights or 3 knights sacrifices for black are equalizing. But here, I think white's still got very good attacking chances. Practically speaking, this king is in a rough situation. Black's not going to be able to castle, and white's going to come up with, good threats on this king. Black sort of castles by hand here, but this is still a pretty rough situation. Not particularly pleasant for white to play against. So ideas, I guess I would say, I don't know. Just basically come up. White's plan is pretty simple. It's to solidify an attack on the black king side. That's often White's plan in the modern openings. And here, White has a pretty good chance of doing this. Like, basically this bishop is out of the game. So, and all of White's pieces are basically oriented towards the king side. So White's basically playing this attack a piece up, and that offers a pretty promising situation. Ideas here, I would say, yeah, bishop to h4, cool. And generally, White's gonna win this. Um, this, the loss of the g pawn and the f pawn for black were really dangerous. That's one of the things that frequently happens. King safety can be a real issue for black in the modern openings, and something that you can capitalize on as white. In this particular case, the f pawn and g pawn got lost pretty easily for black, but white can do things like play queen to b3, and overall have just a generally better position. I don't necessarily understand this maneuvering, queen a3 to queen b3, but like, let's say queen to b6, I guess doesn't want to trade off the b6 pawn for the b3, or the b6 queen for the b3 queen. But this attack seems a little bit, this attack's not going to get executed. So bishop f8 is the response. Hey, welcome, Aphelion. Thank you for joining the stream. So yeah, this is a more quick way for white to break through the modern defenses. But overall, the modern shouldn't be looked for as a solid defensive opening. It's not. I mean, with an early g6, you're basically creating a hook for white to attack on the king side. So, in general, I'm just not sold on the modern and the modern type ideas as an opening. They come with the strategy of giving your opponent an advantage intentionally, and for that reason, I'm very down on them as a general opening policy. But they do provide an opportunity to play an unbalanced opening that will not lead to much basically specific opening preparation. So I do think is something that could potentially have utility against an opponent who is very prepared but not particularly strong. Those are the characteristics that that is the most appealing for. So yeah, if your opponent is someone who knows their Sicilian, or knows their Sicilian extremely well, and you're a Sicilian player as black, you may want to consider something along the lines of playing the modern, because then you'll take your opponent out of their prepared theory, and won't run into too much of an issue in a situation in which you're both kind of out of book theory in an unbalanced position. Unbalanced positions tend to be good, for the stronger player. The unbalanced positions lead to opportunity. I think there's, but basically, more chaotic positions lead to opportunity. So that's what I would say on that, on that topic. But yeah, if your opponent has basically a strong preparation, right? Then you may want to play the perk knowing that you may want to play the perk knowing that it's not objectively the best. Just giving your opponent the opportunity to make errors is yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's an interesting situation, and disorganization leads to opportunity, and that's that's one of the fundamental benefits of this opening. If you really are much stronger than your opponent, creating a situation in which is unfamiliar and both players have an opportunity to err is beneficial, because you are the party that is less likely to err in that scenario. So overall, very interesting stuff. These are two, I'll just play through them really quick and we'll move on to the next thing. But two openings in which the king side gets broken open against the, I think that one of the benefits of the modern is that it's not necessarily it's not necessarily the lines that matter. It's sort of the more general way in which white capitalizes on the better center and spatial control. So here the break is, these two games are probably not representative of overall modern, but they're games in which white uses specific tactical means to really break open their opponent. So e6, f takes in this particular case, and then threats on this knight on g4 and on e6. And then the other game, it came with a very early bishop takes f7. With this bishop takes f7, Black's defense is very difficult, and he's lost the ability to castle, and you have the ability to attack. So that's my thinking there. I think that's very very good idea, and in general, very interesting situation. I mean, I think the modern is an opportunity for white to secure a better center, lock things up in the center, and then attack on the king side. Depending on your attacking skill and creativity, I think you will have great opportunity there. Anyways, that's how I play against it. Establish the better center, then attack on the king side. I think that's probably the consensus idea of the best idea of how to play against the modern openings. And I just wanted to play. I wanted to move on to the next game, but I hope that's a good high level overview. Just these aggressive attacks against the king side are a good move against basically against these modern type openings. Anyways, so here, this is a Piano Man's game. Knight f3, bishop c5 is an error. The most straightforward is just knight takes e5. What's actually kind of interesting is I have a feeling I've played something fairly similar to this from the white side. That e5 pawn can get hung. The e pawn can get displaced and hung in various situations. So here I would say the opportunity is knight takes e5. Take the straightforward hanging pawn. I know it looks it looks somewhat double-edged, but in this particular case, you can safely take this. It's not like the Panov, I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but it's not like e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, where you're basically where you're basically gonna get the e4 pawn taken back. Here you can safely hold this knight here for quite a while. The knight on c3 is defending e4, and yeah. So this is a bad Vienna line for black, and you can just capitalize on it by playing knight takes e5. Knight a4 is not as good. Now so I think this general idea. Sure, yeah, I can take a look. That's an interesting question, our paradox. But yeah, I think I can add that. It'll be pretty similar, I think, to the modern openings. I would, in all of these openings, I have the feeling that the best idea is to just push hard on, basically push hard on, the king side. If you have center control, you'll be able to develop your pieces to much more natural squares than without that. In general, just if the pieces are in generally good positions, which center control and spatial allow you to do, you'll end up in a situation in which you can launch an attack with the pieces already placed in the most efficient place. That's the value. So whichever side your opponent ends up castling, your spatial advantage should allow you to place your pieces somewhere where they are going to have good chances of defeating your opponent. Anyways, I think this attack was not the best plan. I think knight takes e5 is okay here. Black can't really get the pawn on e4, so you are a pawn up after knight takes e5. But yeah, our paradox, you make a really good point, and our paradox, I'll put that down for May 20th at 6:05 p.m. Eastern time. But yeah, if you have any other ideas, so that's tomorrow night. We'll cover that opening theory since you brought it up, our paradox. So countering the double fianchetto openings. Is added for tomorrow night's stream. If you have any other ideas of things to cover, like please just like tell me and I'll do them. There are a lot of concepts in chess, many of which I don't know. Yeah, I mean to be completely honest, there's so many things in chess that I don't know. That if you just give me a general topic, I will learn a lot from going and studying it in order to prepare for the lesson. I'm always super happy to go over it. It's always great for me. So yeah, if there's any specific openings you'd like, if there's any specific end games you'd like, or positions you'd like to take a look at, just let me know and we'll do them. So yeah, that's my. I appreciate it. I appreciate that idea, and we'll cover that in the lesson tomorrow night, for at least 15 minutes, maybe more. So anyways, bishop a5, b4, and there's defense on e5 here. D4, yeah, expands in the center, but all of this, this good center control is a little bit. I guess the good center control is great, but I think after knight takes e5, you would have gotten this center control and be a pawn up as well. So there's a tactical response to knight f6. It's d takes e5. On d takes e5, knight g4, and basically, bishop to g5 is going to cause some serious damage to black's kingside structure. Overall here, black has not, white has secured a huge spatial advantage. This is good for white. So even here, basically black can sort of get him out of this issue by playing d5, but so basically one of black's ideas is that he has kind of poor development and a spatial disadvantage. The best move here for black is this freeing d5. On d5, you can play pawn takes e5, pawn takes d5 potentially. But overall, this is black's best option because he really has a spatial disadvantage. Here, the spatial disadvantage comes into full view because now, what's black going to do to defend? I mean, the only resource that black really has to defend his queen in this case is f6. And this is just miserable because black is very underdeveloped on the queen side and very exposed on the king side. So overall here, rough. Difficult for white to be playing against. Difficult for black to be playing against. Just this open king side provides all sorts of opportunities. So anyways, that's a way to capitalize. And otherwise, from a fundamental perspective, this makes sense. This, by the way, is the game. Pawn takes e5 was the engine move and one that allows you with this great tactical play, bishop to g5. But pawn takes d5 happens anyways. And here, white still has some pretty serious advantages. Big spatial advantage. Black has played d5, which was a good freeing move. But white should still be fine after moves like, castles, then f4, then e5, then knight c4. White has better development and kind of a free route to development. So overall, I think this is good for white. Castles, knight c7. And, this looks good. Okay, so there are some blunders in this endgame. So the first one here looks like something that's pretty much purely tactical. Bishop a4 is not a good move for black. On queen to d4, which I think with sufficient tactical study is a move that would be visible. You're forking this king and you're forking this bishop on d5. So I think that this type of thing, it's a specific, and this is also just, so this gets problematic, unfortunately. But yeah, these specific tactical issues are extremely costly. So I would say, you've played this game, I would have played knight takes e5, but you've kind of played in a fundamentally accurate way. I don't see any problems for the way that white has played this, really. The issue queen e5 is queen takes e5, f takes e5, knight d7, and then this knight, basically this pawn structure is going to get dismantled. So this will lead to a good, a pickup of a pawn and a good position for black. Um, in terms of other things going on in this situation, you've basically played a generally good game. Queen e5 leads to that tactic, but your opponent misses it, so you're kind of going in a solid tactical position. Um, but this, I think, is really something. These types of situations happen just all the time. You'll have a two-move tactic that will win a piece, and if you win a piece, yeah, they're all on this stream, Master. Basically, this stream is this stream has the last 14 days of free lessons available. Free courses are a good idea too. I have so far I've mostly been focused on game review, but free courses I think are a great idea as well. But if you'd like, yeah, no, thank you. No, so we have 14 days of our last 14 days of lessons are available on Twitch, and then every lesson that I've ever, I think every lesson that I've ever done, but certainly more lessons are available on the YouTube channel. So my goal here is really just to make chess lessons completely free, and specifically live chess lessons completely free. So yeah, free courses. There are free courses. I do, yeah. I thought it was linked, but if it's not linked, then I'll post it. If it's not here, it's really just basically it's just the same. It's the same material as this. It's basically I really just wanted to. I really only have a YouTube channel because I was interested in putting up I was interested in making my videos available forever. But yeah, free courses I think is a good idea. I think other people have free courses, but not too many people have free live lessons. So free live lessons is where I was thinking, but yeah, I'll put up. I think the main point is free material for everybody. So free courses is a good concept. Maybe I can do some editing and end up. Sorry about this. Let's see. Yeah, so this is my channel. It's got all the videos from. This has all the videos from. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I'm just not super. I'm not super up to these things. I don't worry about these things too much. My goal is just to free chess lessons for everyone. The whole streaming, the whole streaming concept is a little bit beyond me, to be completely honest. But yeah. Anyways, this is yeah. So this is the game for Piano Man. But I think the main focus here is tactics. Anyways, the main focus here is tactics, and I think with that, we can sort of so yeah, so knight f6, pawn takes h3, and white ends up with a free situation here. The issue is closing out. I don't know. Sorry, I'm interested in knowing what you're asking, but I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. But yeah, free courses are free. The main point is free courses are good. There's probably better way to take a look at this material. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, Master. But anyways, queen to d4 is queen to d4, d5 is an idea. Bishop to e3. So this move is extremely important in this game. I have a class that starts on being on Mondays and Wednesdays at starts at 6:30. So I can't do the 6 o'clock stream. So I'm gonna try to make the schedule start at 5. Anyways, Yeah, this ends up being pretty good for white. So the fact that this has slipped away from white points to tactical weakness. And basically, what I would just say about kind of these tactical oversights. So here, knight a4 is an idea, but knight takes e5 is better. This is tactics. The middle game all makes sense. But the main points that I would suggest to you, Piano Man, are you're playing a fairly strong game. You look like you're in a good position. And my suggestion to you in this situation, Piano Man, is just really study your tactics. Your tactical study. And this ties into what you're talking about, Call. Is middle game is almost entirely tactics. One of the things that I have on my Discord right now is basically a stream that's it's basically a section called recommended chess resources, but it looks at a few different if you're looking at all the chess resources, you can basically see there's modern chess strategy that aims towards positional play, positional improvement. But the most efficient thing, what I think 99% of amateurs would benefit the most from, is just tactical study. I'll go through two quick ones. Chess.com has Puzzle Battle and Puzzle Rush. So here you can just go to Puzzles, Puzzle Battle, and start a 3-minute puzzle battle. And then Puzzle Rush has a 5-minute or 3 or 5 minute speed thing. But if you spend that's unusual, to be honest, Colloid. I don't know that many of. I don't know what tactics trainer you're referring to, but that would be very surprising. That's always very surprising to me, Call, because that's not usually what I see happen. But some positional play is good too, and for that I'd look to like modern chess openings for. I would say get your tactics up to 2400 and get back to me. It's really just the most important part of the game. If you're below 2000, very heavy tactical study is going to help you. Yeah, that's good. Keep at it. I don't think I don't know. I don't know the rating systems too well, so I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but. It is weird to me because I usually see it in the other direction. I frequently see IMs, NMs with 2000, 2100 puzzle ratings. But yeah, those puzzle paddles should be a good way to extrapolate puzzle skill into a game. It's what works for me. But yeah, I guess everyone's a little bit different, so it's a little bit. I give my best answers, and the answers, but at the same time, there may be specific that will work better for you improvement. That said, I think 99 or more percent of players will benefit from tactical study. But yeah, you can always chess strategy or those types. But I'd be very yeah, I that surprises me, to be completely honest, Colloid. Again, it's I don't know your situation, but yeah, honestly, yeah, I can't speak to that. I would just keep at it. Is the main point. I don't know how consistently you do puzzles. Are you doing them an hour or two a day? But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that would be my recommendation, Call. If yeah, I don't 25 seems low. With modern puzzle battle, you can do about 30 times. You can do about 600 puzzles an hour. So 25 puzzles a day doesn't particularly sound like that many. If in puzzle battle you do about 30 puzzles or 20 to 30 puzzles in 3 minutes, so you go over probably 600 an hour. So 25 an hour sounds low. Anyways, I think that's really the way to improve. Others may tell you something else. I can tell you I have no incentive to tell anything that might lead to you I have no incentive to tell you something that I don't believe to be true. Yeah, I would really stick with 600. I would do 600 puzzles an hour for 3 hours. Do that for a month. I guarantee you will improve. I guarantee your site will improve. There's these discrepancies that you're talking about seem very unusual to me, and I sort of wonder, why that's going on. But anyways, it's not a big deal. I'm just curious. It's interesting. Yeah, 30 puzzles times sometimes 20 30 puzzles in 3 minutes times 20 times in an hour. That's about what you do in puzzle battle. Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely. 10 puzzles a minute. That's not too bad. That's six puzzle every 6 seconds. I'll do it for you if you'd like. But puzzle battle. Yeah, puzzle battle runs 30 puzzles in 3 minutes. So, uh, yeah. So that's my recommendation. But anyways, I always wonder about incentives in these types of things, and I would mainly be focused on improving your game at all at all values. Otherwise, it doesn't really make much sense. But anyways, you're in a very surprising. You're saying something that's surprising to me. If you Yeah, then maybe the puzzles that you're looking at are too difficult. I would start with 2 or 3 move tactics. Puzzle Battle on chess.com is a very good resource. You get at least a few free puzzle battles a day. If you get premium membership, you get unlimited puzzle battle. But yeah, 600 an hour for 3 hours. I guarantee your vision will improve. But I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm just always kind of surprised. Um, anyways, cool. Good stuff, guys. Anyways, thank you very much for asking those questions. And, again, just pay attention to the incentives. And if you feel like you're doing too little puzzles or doing many puzzles or the right amount of puzzles, I guarantee you should be doing more. And these discrepancies that you're talking about seem very unusual to me. Anyways, thank you thanks for telling me about that. That expands my worldview. But back to Piano Man's game. In this situation, let's take a look. There are multiple opportunities here where I think White, loses because of tactical oversights. This could have potentially led to an error after Queen takes, Pawn takes, Knight D7 is problematic, and the larger tactical error, the one that I think is decisive, is this one. After bishop to a4, queen to d5 is a move that you pretty much must see. I mean, this isn't bullet. This isn't somewhere where you really, have an opportunity to you're not playing with 1 second here. You have a good amount of time to kind of look at this position and see what this break is. So, anyways, queen to d5, threatens the king and bishop. This really is something that needs to be seen, and unfortunately, in this position, it was more or less decisive. So yeah, I guess I would say, your error here is tactical, and that's where I'd put in the time. So yeah, my argument here, Piano Man, is please just do your tactical study. I've gone through it, but basically spend an hour or two a day for a month or 2 months or 3 months, and it will help your game an enormous amount. I promise. It's the type of thing you can't teach. It's just work that you have to do to improve your game. I can tell you to do it, but as a teacher, I can't do much in terms of basically, I can tell you to do it, but I don't know if that, I don't know what that, it's all you, basically, is the point. So, improving your tactical vision is something that, is your study, but it is the fastest way to improve. And I strongly believe that. I feel like good tactical study in this game, being able to see that queen d5, is a very strong thing for you to do. So that's my recommendation. Overall, I like your game. I appreciate you sending it. I think you played a great middle game. I think you played a lot of very reasonable moves. I would have played knight takes e5. Knight takes e5 was hanging. So don't be afraid to deviate if the opening theory gets unusual and your opponent hangs a move on move 4. But yeah, Tactical study is where you will improve the fastest based on your study time. Anyways, nicely done, and yeah, good stuff. Thank you for sending the game, Piano Man. I'm always happy to see them, and please send in as many as you'd like. Um, all right, on to the next one. This is Zebras Can Fly game. Um, I mean, if it's free. I honestly, if you guys, I don't mean to be too dogmatic about this. Like, as long as you guys aren't paying for, your chess study, I think you should go with whatever's the most efficient for you. Really, the important thing is that, yeah, no, I mean, I think that the important thing is really just to not pay for something that you don't have to pay for. It just doesn't make any sense. So I would recommend not doing that. It's up to you, though. But I feel like chess resources are available enough to you that it doesn't really make sense to pay any money for something that you can very easily get for free. I wouldn't pretend. I've had some at various points, Electric, but yeah, it's kind of at this point, you can get GM training for free. I mean, I think that there are some very good, there are some very good online resources for you. I'm not convinced that to be completely honest, I'm not convinced that there's anything that a paid chess coach could teach you that you couldn't learn from free educational videos. Uh, yeah, no, but anyways, if you guys have a differing opinion or you guys can provide evidence to the contrary, please tell me. But in my mind, it just seems like kind of a racket, and I don't know. I don't believe that rackets should be supported, to be completely honest. Um, anyways, very interesting situation. And yeah, on to the next game. Um, cool. So this game was sent in. This was sent in by Zebras Can Fly. Zebras Can Fly, I believe, was playing white. And yeah. Um, what's going on in this situation? Basically, an early flank opening by black. White gets good center control. Basically, here, the white's basically able to establish c4, d4, and e4, and have a complete, complete center control in this situation. F3 supports e4, knight d2, castles, f5, pawn takes. White's looking fine. Basically, this is this is a good, uh, this is basically good development for white, and with moves like knight to f4, knight to d5, white's able to get very good development here. This a3 is valuable, but yeah, I guess I would say here d5, bishop to f or knight to f4, and then bishop to f4. But overall, I would just really take white's position here. This makes a lot of sense. Moves like queen to c2, pressuring on f5. Moves like knight to g3. And yeah, I think basically white's looking just fine. The development's a little bit better, and yeah, ideas like d5 could be valuable. Um, uh, yeah, no, I completely agree, Electric. I think that the free chess coaching that's available online is excellent, and the free resources in terms of videos. There's so many videos that teach basically verbatim what's in paid chess curriculums. The government pays for chess lessons in many places, and the interesting thing about those chess lessons that the government is paying for is that the identical material is available for free online. So I think it's amazing that modern technology has allowed us to advance this way. And I think for the sake of basically for the sake of wise spending, both at the individual and organizational level, It's very important that we move to these free lessons because, for every dollar that the government is spending on chess lessons, that's a dollar that's not being spent on hospitals. So yeah, yeah, no. So I guess that's my point. If you can spend money on chess lessons or spend money on a hospital, to me that's a very easy choice. If you worked in the chess profession, that would be a much more difficult choice. But for me, I would way rather be spending money on, on basically, something that has a wide benefit as opposed to something that can easily be replaced. So, up to you. Um, Anyways, that's my thoughts on that topic. Since you guys keep pressing me, I'm super happy to talk about it. But yeah, I think or how about teachers for other subjects as well, or university systems? I mean, there's many educations that can be given. It doesn't have to be something where there's an equally good replacement online. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You guys keep talking about it. I'm happy to talk about it, but I would way rather be spending my money on a science teacher or a science lab than chess lessons where you can basically get something that's identical for free online. So that's the thought. Anyways, thank you all very much I talk about it too much, but you guys are always interested in talking about it, so I'm happy to talk about it. So anyways, let's take a look. All right, so e4 flank opening here, c4, knight c3, and yeah, castles f5, pawn takes, knight to g3, pawn takes. White's looking fine, no issues here. Ideas like bishop to f4 could be good. Ideas like knight to b5 could be good. Queen a4 looks kind of ambitious, but pawn takes, bishop a6, queen c2, and basically white's got somewhat of a fractured pawn structure. Bishop f4 looks good, rook e1 looks good, king f2 looks good. A lot of plans here for white, open lines for attack, queen to a4, queen to e2, rook to e1. But overall here, white's looking solid. So, I don't know, king f2, rook h1 maybe, but this overall looks good. I think that white sort of missteps here. On this position, I think that probably placing pressure on this knight is somewhat dangerous. This king f2 I think is good, but yeah, d5 looks. Yeah, feel free, send as many as you'd like, guys. But yeah, so I think queen a4 is pretty important. But the issue here is you're sort of disconnecting you're disconnecting a passed pawn here. On d5, basically this knight can move forward. The engine values are kind of not that not that. I mean, they seem to be bouncing around. They seem to be more volatile than usual on this. But yeah, I guess the engine's favoring ideas like bishop a3 and rook e1 over bishop to f4. The engine seems to really not like the bishop on the f4 diagonal. I guess I'm sort of curious about why. Let's assess on that, basically why this diagonal is, being used. So I would say bishop to a3 is good. Yes, please send as much as you'd like, guys. Yeah. Feel free to send on my my Discord or on the Chess Study Discord. Hopefully the links are on on the site or on the stream. But yeah, so bishop to a3 I think is a way better play. Rook to e1 I think is good. But yeah, this overall here I think bishop to a3, rook to f7. This immediate threat and this long diagonal is better than this diagonal, and I think that the engine sort of confirms this without really being able to say it exactly. Yeah, bishop a3 it basically focuses on that rook on f8. queen to a4 puts pressure on c4, and moves like rook to e1, rook to e5. These end up being good for white. Rook to f7, rook to e1, and you're basically sort of trying to cement an attack. But in any case, you've captured the open file and you've developed your piece with a direct threat that's had to be dealt with by black. So rook to e1 is an idea. Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Yep. I've added your game for tomorrow night's 6:05 p.m. stream. Or no, sorry, Matt. Yep. Yeah. Tomorrow night at 6:05 p.m. It's in for tomorrow. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, either way. But yeah. This game in general, if we're looking for things that could potentially be improved in this game, I feel like White's development was generally pretty good. He developed this big center against the modern opening, pawn takes, and then bishop a3, is already getting assessed as the best engine move here before queen to c2. Queen to c2 is kind of an interesting idea. The issue with it is queen to c2 is sort of a backwards move because your idea here is basically to trade off this pawn, which is likely to get lost, for this pawn on f5. I would play bishop to a3 instead, and then you get threats on this rook on f8. Rook e1 is important. This rook e1 provides the most natural improvement for the rook. So on bishop to a3. On queen to c2, you're not really trading off this pawn, because after bishop takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, you probably should play queen to a4 and then threats on c4. The idea so you can't play after bishop takes f4. You can't immediately play bishop takes f5. So bishop takes c4. This is not an acceptable. This is not an acceptable response. Bishop a3 wins the tempo. Exactly right. So I would say bishop a3 here, and then potentially f rook to e1. I like f rook to e1 because I think the idea of queen to c2 makes sense. You're placing a threat on f5. Hey DJ, thank you very much for the follow. Pawn takes c3, and then threats like bishop a3 become valuable against this rook on f8. This queen c2 move I think is a little bit misdirected. If you play rook to e1, then you're fine, or even rook to d. Basically rook to d1 to try to prevent this pin from continuing. I think that's a better play. So I would say rook to d1 here. This makes sense. And pawn takes c4, bishop takes c4. White's in good shape. So preventing that hang for rook d1, and then playing pawn takes d5, I think that's a better course of action for white. Bishop takes, bishop f4. So it's the tempo. So apart from rook to d1, I think is more efficient than bishop takes c4. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Backspace. I appreciate it. Thank you. Rook d1 is rook d1 is basically better, I think. On queen to c2, this doesn't lead to white being able to pick up a pawn that he has lost. This instead is a better play. So, bishop f4, rook d1. I would have played rook over as opposed to pawn takes c4, bishop takes c4. That was an improvement. A better improvement, I think, is bishop to a3. Bishop to a3 focusing on f8 seems like a better play. After queen c2 has been made, basically bishop to a3 plays off better than bishop to f4. If bishop to a3 is played, then white gets to develop with a threat. The tempo emote, yeah, no, for sure. I think that ends up being a I think that ends up being a better plan for white. But yeah, the tempo emote that Jen was nice enough to make for sure. I should upload it. I've been a little bit. I'm just starting a few courses at once right now, so I'm sort of slow on some of these things. But yeah. Rook takes, and yeah. Yeah, no, Jen already made these things. I actually just need to upload that one. I just have had very little free time, unfortunately. Um, so after this, rook to d1, rook takes, and rook's looking, white's looking fine. So queen d5 here I think is good, and then rook to d8. Yeah, no. I think no. It was nice enough from Jen to make one. I like it a lot. But yeah, Jen made a few. I think a few icons that I need to sort of get onto the stream. But anyways, ways to improve this position. All this was straightforward. The two moves that I'd be the most focused on this game are queen to c2 is not a threat that advances your attack. It would work well after rook to d1. So I would say rook d1 over queen to c2 is an improvement. And then bishop to a3 developing on this long diagonal is better than bishop to e4 or bishop to f4. I understand the appeal of bishop to f4, but developing with a tempo is valuable. Just playing bishop to f4 and then bishop to e5 is fine, but probably a little slow and also somewhat dangerous because this knight can remove your outpost. But then you can recapture with the f pawn, and there's complexity. It's a game. So, anyways, rook takes, rook d1, and white basically ends up in a solid position. I don't think there were a ton of errors made in this game by white. This is a great closing tactic, nicely done. And the things that I take a look at here are, bishop to a3 as opposed to queen to c2, or rook. Or if you're interested in developing or defending this bishop, you can play rook to d1 as opposed to queen to c2. But queen to c2 is a bit inefficient. And then bishop to f4 is inefficient in the sense that bishop to a3 should be played instead. So, interesting situation. Very interesting. Yeah, I really appreciate you sending the game, Zebras Can Fly. Overall, interesting game, accurate, good win. And the change that I would make is not spending time either moving the bishop to a square where it basically developing the bishop to a non-tempo place, and in playing queen c2 when the bishop should be defended by the rook. So anyways, interesting game. Thank you very much for sending it, and on to the next one. All right, here's Kiro's game. Kiro's playing black. All right, and let's take it from black's perspective. Black is playing against the queen pawn opening. Here you can transpose it into the Grunfeld. That's what I play. You still have probably any move other than e4, and you can transpose it into the Grunfeld later. But black has basically opted for the King's Indian defense as opposed to the Grunfeld. I play d5 here, but King's Indian defense is fine. This will end up with an attack on the king side. Yeah, c5 is an early break, sure. Knight d7, bishop d3, and overall here black's looking fine. Basically this is interesting, cool. Yeah, thanks Star Paradox. Yeah, and also just to clarify, I don't have many subscribers. I appreciate subscribers, but that money's not getting spent on me. I've made about $120 over 200 hours of lecture, 200 plus hours of lecture. Very uninterested in playing games with subscribers. That money doesn't go to me, so I appreciate the thoughts, but just to be clear, very uninterested. I don't have a donate button, and I don't want to make any money off of subscribers either. That's not what this is about. This is about distributing free chess material, because chess material can be free. So yeah, I think I've made about $120 over 200 hours plus. So yeah, the subscribers is whatever. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys' support of the stream much. I appreciate, but don't feel any pressure to subscribe or anything unless you'd like to. But I'm not keeping that money. So, anyways, yeah, no, it's about free material. It's this stream is very intentionally not designed to raise any money. So yeah, d6 facing off against e4, c5, and then here basically black, black runs into this d5 Benoni type push, and black plays knight to e5, pawn takes, cool, b6 here, g4, bishop g7, bishop e7, and yeah, white has a big spatial advantage. This isn't unusual for King's Indian defense, but it is going to be very problematic if white castles queenside here. If white castles queenside here, then black's ability to attack on the king side, as is normal, is not super available. I think ideas like knight e8, knight d6 end up being pretty good for black. And ideas like a5, I think provide an opportunity, to at least diversify the way that where black has attacking points. So d4, knight f6, bishop g6. This is the King's Indian attack, but it really does indicate kind of a weakness of the King's Indian attack. King's Indian defense. King's Indian defense always leads to a fairly favorable eval for white. It's a sort of a flank opening, and those, as we've gone through multiple times, tend to lead to objective benefits for white as opposed, or objective benefits for white who has the space and center control. So black is fighting against a good, a big eval there. I think black playing knight to e5 is a little bit sketchy. This knight to e5, leaves this c5 pawn hanging. It doesn't really strengthen this attack. I think an undermining move like e6 or maybe e5 could be good. With e6 or e5, you're going to end up with a with a backward pawn on d6. But I think you should be able to successfully defend it with moves like knight to e8, bishop to d4, that kind of thing. So yeah, b6, bishop to b7, and yeah. This, basically the one of the yeah, totally, DJ. Yeah, exactly right. I have a Discord. It's linked to. It's just my personal Discord. But you can go there and put go to the game submission section and just yeah, feel free to send a game on there, DJ. So yeah, this ends up being pretty good for white. And the reason why it's good for white is because the king side became a place where white is attacking as opposed to where black is attacking. So, the King's Indian defense is committal. You're really hoping for a strong attack on the king side here. This, basically this ends up being good for black. And yeah, pawn takes. Cool. Yeah. Thanks, DJ. It'll probably be in for May 21st at 10 a.m. I'll confirm on the Discord in a minute, but it'll be on 10. It'll be at 10 a.m. on May 21st. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, this game provides sort of an interesting situation. It's basically how does black... first off, I don't think there's much in the way of improvements here. Knight e5 was probably misguided. If we look at the opening book, here I think knight e5 is not going to be the most common move. Most common move is a6, then b5, and then expanding things. b5, b4 I think ends up in a pretty good place. Pawn takes e5, b6, and this ends up looking pretty good for black. Pretty good for white. I don't see much of a misstep. This seems like it's Grandmaster. I think, yeah, this guy was a Grandmaster. So I'm sort of looking for any real errors, but I would say knight e5 is somewhat inefficient. After pawn takes e5, b6, and you're fine. And bishop to b7, okay, sure. It's really tough. You're playing somebody so strong that it's kind of like, what can you do, really? Knight e8 was a little better than knight d7. The thing about knight d7 is that it causes kind of a lasting problem with the knight and its mobility after bishop to g4. But yeah, I don't know. Say b6 here. Yeah, this is just a crushing. This is just a crushing win for white. Uh, I wouldn't have done any better as black. This player is a grandmaster. Um, King's Indian can lead to kingside attacks. When I think of King's Indian, I think of kingside attacks involving moves like knight to e8 and f5. King's Indian theory. So by the way, Kiro, you played fine. Knight takes e5 is probably the move I would have steered away from here. I think a6 is better. I think knight e5 and this pawn structure isn't particularly good for you. This is sort of questionable. b6. This pawn structure is just worse. But I don't really see much of an opportunity to improve here either. In this situation, maybe e5. I guess that e5 is a more common break than c5 here. If e5, d takes e5, pawn takes, queen takes, rook takes, knight takes, knight takes, and then I think rook to e8 is the best play, or knight takes e4 with this discovery. Yeah, so Kiro, the two moves that I can lead you towards. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, Phil. I appreciate it. But yeah, the moves that I would change here are e5 over c5 is the preferred opening move in this case. It's played about 5 times as often. And then knight e5 is a little questionable. But honestly, you're playing a grandmaster. This is really tough stuff. But yeah, I would say those were probably the errors. E5 I think is better, and not playing knight e5 is better. So, anyways, this is my that's basically my recommendation on this game. That said, your opponent capitalized on everything perfectly. Playing a grandmaster, it's brutal. So yeah, interesting situation. Yeah, thank you very much for sending over the game, Kiro, and yeah, really appreciate you sending it over. I wish I could be more helpful because this is a high level grandmaster in a tough game, but tough players. So yeah, overall, I mean, what can you do here? Bishop takes. Overall, white's gonna be sort of in the King's Indian, this transposed into the Slav. I'll play a more King's Indian oriented situation. But what I see most frequently in the King's Indian is moves like knight e8, f5, f5, and then attacks on the king side. Those are more common. The queen side expansions are also possible if white opts to castle on the queen side. But yeah, this type of aggressive attacking by white against what appeared to be very small inefficiencies is pretty brutal. Yeah, sorry, Kiro. Tough one. But thank you very much for sending it. I wish I could provide more, I wish I could have provided something more helpful, but the Grandmaster would have destroyed me too, I'm sure. Thanks, Kiro. Awesome. On to the next one. This is Banana Reno's game. Cool. Banana Reno is playing white. And yeah, this is the Bestrikov, I guess is what they're calling it. But it's yeah, Sicilian Khan. Tough with basically all of these with all of these pawns getting moved by black. The knights are in kind of an awkward position to defend. You can play moves like bishop d2. You can play moves like bishop e2. You can play knight b3. But basically, try to find something kind of committal for white. I wouldn't say the Stafford necessarily. The Stafford is, I don't know. The Stafford is kind of a difficult. The issue with the Stafford is that it, leads to a big sacrifice for, basically leads to a big sacrifice for black just off the bat. Sacrificing the e pawn and the pawn structure and the queenside knight is too much, I think, for black to, is too much for I think black to be giving up there. I would say, if you want to play an offbeat opening against a high level player, I would go with the elephant gambit. I would think that the elephant gambit is identically forcing. No. I mean, I think that's a good idea. I think that there's a lot of I think there's a lot of good value in looking at dangerous book openings against the against high level masters. I just have this one memorable case where I saw a 2150 just destroy like a 2500. It was a really rough game that I saw, but it was out of the elephant gambit at a slower time control. And the elephant gambit is a really dangerous opening. It is like legitimately very trappy and gets good position against, or basically gets good position against intuitive small errors. So I like, in terms of the Stafford, I'm not a huge fan, but the elephant gambit is the one that I like. And you can play it in a situation, you'd play it in the same situation. So Stafford gambit goes e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, knight c6. Knight takes c6. But if you're looking for like a surprise attack, I like the elephant gambit better, which is e4, e5, knight f3, d5, and that leads to some complex stuff. That said, that strategy is not how you really should play chess. I mean, in my mind, what you should do to play chess is, be better than your opponent. Do something along the lines of like, do something along the lines of like, get your positional play really strong, get your tactical play really strong, and then play something, that's relatively equal. That's always how I played. Just basically get the fundamentals right, get the tactical vision right, and then just beat your opponent. But if you are playing someone much stronger, like you are playing against a 1900 as a 1300, then tricky openings can be a good resource. I can tell you from my experience that I don't know those openings super well. People seem to stop playing them against you after a while. But I think that they do have value as a surprise attack in those types of situations. So that's my thinking, DJ, on that. And I think it's pretty. I think it's a pretty good way to play those. It's worth a shot at least. I mean, I know that I don't know those openings now. I'm sure I didn't know them as a 1900. So. But yeah, playing these aggressive, booked, dangerous openings against higher rated players can provide a good sneak attack once in a while, I think. But at the same time, it's sort of trappy. Like, I don't think that, I think basically, the issue with, trappy openings is basically, I think the idea with trappy openings is they're not really correct. They're not really correct chess from a fundamental perspective. They're not objectively the best thing to be played. So I don't really think that's the best. I don't really know if that's the best idea forward. But yeah, no, that's my argument on that, DJ. Those trappy openings. It's not a good idea to make them your whole game. But they can be useful once in a while against unprepared players. and high-level players can be unprepared there. Anyways, going on that, bishop e3, pawn takes, and basically white's looking pretty good. One of the issues about this opening is it has made your knights very awkward there. But at the same time, it doesn't really, it doesn't really advance black's development. Basically here, if you move a minor piece, so you play what the book move is, like say bishop to d3, this will end up being pretty good for white. Basically this structure, these minor piece developments, put you way ahead in terms of development. I've heard of it, but I don't know it, to be completely honest. I'll look it up after the stream, but I like these types of small, obscure gambits. They just don't get played. The issue is that there was a time at which I was seeing the elephant gambit or, various, obscure gambits on a more frequent basis. But when you get to like 21, 2200, people just stop trying them against you. And you don't really ever have to learn them. Or the Traxler. I like the Traxler, and it's awesome that Aphelion has his own line named after himself in the Traxler. But the thing about the Traxler is that I wouldn't know how to play it. I would just sidestep it with d5. So I never went through and sort of learned how to do it correctly. When I'm playing high level not high level, but when I'm playing master games against other masters, no one ever tries these openings. I don't know them. The things that I see the most frequently are like the Sicilian Dragon. I see constantly. D4 Queen's Gambit I see constantly. Like really just very mainline stuff is what I see the most frequently. And I think that realistically, those openings would be very dangerous against me. I would probably in game situation say, oh, okay, I don't know them, so I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to come up with my own way of sidestepping it, and I might sidestep it, accidentally. But these trap openings, these book trap openings, many people, I really think that higher level masters might be vulnerable to them, because I never had to go through and learn them. I just learned I learned the sidestepping move and then didn't actually learn the theory on him that well. I don't know. Honestly I could try it. I played a few games yesterday, DJ, but at the same time I'm sort of like the thing about playing viewers is I feel like a lot of streamers do that. And I'm not really interested in being a streamer. I'm interested in being someone who gives free chess lessons so that chess lessons become free and available to everyone regardless of financial situation, etc. But yeah, no, I mean my goal is to make live chess lessons free. So playing games is sort of not the goal here. If you play Blitz again, if you challenge me to a Blitz game, I'll probably say yes. I'm on chess.com plenty. Yeah, I think that's that's true. So Subban, the game, what makes particular gambits dangerous are ones in which intuitive moves are deadly. Intuitive moves can be very bad against Danish gambit, elephant gambit, that kind of thing. At some level, you just sort of learn to sidestep them, but you never go back and learn them correctly, or I never did. Anyways, on this opening, we've been on this game for a bit. This is Banana Reno's game, and your opponent is somewhat underdeveloped. You're still in a well-established opening theory, so it's not as if white has a huge edge or anything. Knight b4 is kind of a deviation from the mainline opening theory. And I think that knight d4 would be a move that you would sort of flag. I think on knight to b4, we're looking at this endgame theory. We're looking at this theory here, right? And there's about 3,000 games that have been played, and the difference between knight b4 and knight to f6 is more than half a pawn. So when I had this lesson where I wanted to come up with a way of establishing whether you should have something in your opening repertoire or not, and And then my criteria for removing something from your opening repertoire was was basically whether or not there was a difference of more than half a pawn between the best choice. So in here there's a 0.6 difference, and whether or not it was played more than 1% of the time in an opening book. And here, this knight b4 move is not even in this opening book, so it's less than 1% possibility. So for that reason, I wouldn't play that as black, based on those two criteria. I don't know. I just sort of liked my criteria of coming up with things that should and shouldn't be in your opening strategy. So I'm assessing moves against that idea. B3 leads to bishop a3 being a problem. Let's see. B3, bishop a3, rook to c2, and basically this is a lead of 0.163. I don't know. I guess here instead probably just like the engine's advocating you start the attack. You're saying basically here play f5. Cool. Yeah, we can play it. We can play it, DJ. I'll match you after the stream. I'll play one after the stream's over. But I'll click on that link as soon as the stream's over, DJ. Bishop takes, knight c5, d4, and overall white's looking pretty solid here. There's not really, there wasn't really many errors made. But knight takes, rook f7. And white's looking good, mate in 2. How to figure out where to do these kind of pawn breaks? I like this book by Rios. It's in the recommended chess, the recommended chess section of my stream. It's Chess Structures by Rios. But yeah, Chess Structures by Rios gives some very good assessments of pawn breaks. It has some good demonstrated games, and it's a good way to kind of familiarize yourself with pawn structures. There's some openings where a pawn break is just necessary. You know that you're going to have to play e5 or c5 in the modern as black. Like otherwise, you're just never going to challenge white for the center. So e5 or c5 as black, I think, is your move there. But yeah, that should be good. Overall here, you're facing off basically against these pawn moves as white. Your moves are all intuitive. You're developing. I think this is a very quiet thing, but castling I think is actually a really good idea. I think that continuing to develop in a really quick way is white's best opportunity for attack. So I actually really like as white castling here. This makes a lot of sense. Basically just let the knight expend all these moves, taking on d3, and then recapture with a move that opens up the rook file for your rook. Don't bother moving the bishop. Just let after this, now white has played 4 developing moves against black's 0 developing moves. So that I think is really a good idea for white. Knight takes, cool, b3. Engine saying start f5. I'm looking at other moves here, like maybe I'm wondering even rook to c2, which looks awkward, but it's kind of cool because you can play rook c2, rook f2, and then f5. But yeah, probably just the engine move f5. That makes the most sense. Then you can play queen to h5 and get threats on the king. Good stuff. So yeah, white's looking good. And overall, I think this is this should be close to a win. So yeah, good. Thank you very much for sending in the game, Banana Reno. In terms of improvements here, I think you play a very solid game. Particular moves that I like: castles. Let black trade off his only developed piece for yours. Knight takes c6. Again, I probably would not play knight to c6. The reason why I wouldn't play knight to c6 is less to do with giving this queen. So on knight to c6, b takes c6, and then this queen gets this open file on b2. So after that, you play b3 and defend the open file. But the thing about this is this open file is fine for black, but I would just be more concerned about the tempo here. You're taking a move to trade this knight on d4 for this knight on c6. And overall, I think that's sort of not a good trade. I don't think you want to spend time on that trade. Things like knight to e2 could be good. Knight to e2 and then knight to g3 and attack with f5. But the thing about it is you're using tempo to help basically black improve his pawn structure. This outpost is fine. I do see that you're going to run into some problems with bishop c5 potentially that could be difficult to deal with. But yeah, I think here basically white's going to just be in a good place. After some of these black missteps. But knight to c6 is probably the only move in the game where I think you're sort of playing a little bit inefficiently. I'd say like queen f3, f5. Those are better ideas. So I think you're making kind of. I think basically this ends up being an error. And I think if you played basically the threat on d4 by the knight the same way that you played the threat on d3 by the knight, so you do something great. I think you basically castle and you continue your development and you continue to move things forward. A very efficient tempo way to play. Castle, knight takes d3, queen takes d3, or c takes d3. So say c takes d3. This way of playing makes a lot of sense. The quick development versus the threat. Here, I think you should do exactly the same thing. You basically have this knight threatening your knight, and I think your best tempo play is to move a knight to like ce2, and just basically continue to improve your pieces, as opposed to worrying about as opposed to worrying about the direct threat. Maybe queen to d2 too is good, but let black organize on you. Don't play a move that sort of takes a relatively less developed piece with your relatively more developed piece. Your knight has moved twice to get there and moved a third time to take the knight, and that knight had only moved once. So if it helps you, by assessing like the sunk cost of it, then I would say count your 3 moves by the knight versus your 1 move from the, or I guess it was 2, but 3 moves from the knight trading for the other knight is it sort of makes those moves inefficient. Just let black take you and don't spend any time on it. You can take back in response. Improve your pieces with like queen to d2 or maybe knight ce2, which holds the c file. Otherwise, I really do. I think you played a great game. I think this overall makes a lot of sense. Bishop to c5, excellent. This is probably this might be my favorite move of the game. Like bishop to c5, destroying black's ability to castle. That was really a good idea. And then you get this outpost on c5. So overall, I think you've done some relatively complicated positional things very well. The error, basically the errors here were pretty small. I think this might not have the highest accuracy score. I think you're brought down a little bit by moves after things are already sort of decided. But yeah, I would have played a lot of moves very similarly to this one. You get this quick development. Black basically basically moves 3 times to take your bishop, which moved once. And the only real change that I would make, I guess b3 is technically an error as well. But I'm more stuck on knight takes c6 because I think that for a fundamental reason, you both improve black's pawn structure and give black a line of attack and trade off a piece that, and basically are the one who trades off a piece where it's not super clear that your piece is better than your opponent's. And b3. I don't know. I'm not. I guess b3 may be necessary in here. F5. Basically, the engine is just saying start attacking and ignore that threat completely. Maybe queen to d2 could be a little bit better. This advances your piece and still provides that defense. The engine optimal play is not that intuitive because it's basically saying give up this b2 pawn and let the queen into your position. I'm sure that's objectively the best, but I more want to refute I more want to improve on b3 based on fundamental considerations as opposed to the engine's tactical one. Engine just says, oh, it's all tactics. This tactic will play out better. So give up this piece and start your attack. I think that's sort of anti-fundamental. Humans don't really play that way often. Basically, knowing the computer has very complete knowledge that this attack is going to be effective for white. So basically playing, the computer has very complete knowledge that that this attack is effective for white. Human probably wouldn't have that same level of certainty. So for that reason, I think that b3, a more reasonable way to improve on b3 is think about other things that would achieve the same objectives. So like queen d2, I think is a good idea. Knight a4 could be interesting actually. Knight a4 is interesting because you can bring your knight to b6, but I understand the need to defend your b2 pawn. I would just, from a fundamental perspective, view it as view your best response as a developing move. The computer basically doesn't value your your threat on the b2 pawn. It doesn't even register it. It just says attack and who cares what happens to the b2 pawn. I have a more human perspective than that. I play queen to d2. I understand not wanting to hang that b2 pawn. Probably play queen to d2 and f5 the next move. Anyways, very interesting game. Thank you very much for the follow, Darny. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here and thanks for joining the stream. We have one more game here this morning, and here it is. It's from The Real. Cool. Let's take a look. The Real is playing white, and he's going into this basically queen's gambit with knight f3. I'm sort of curious. This isn't the line that I play. I mean, I'm a d4 player, but even when I play d4, I don't really play knight f3. Sort of curious about what the most common responses here are. So the most common responses here are knight f6, c6, and c5. D takes c4 is also sometimes played. Bishop b4 is an unusual move. It's way down the list in terms of how frequently it's played. But not bad. It's not a bad move. Its improvement is about 0.1, so it's a completely playable move here. It's just not the way that black most frequently does things. Okay, a3. Bishop takes, b takes. b6 is another kind of unusual move. b6 is sort of way down the list too. Black's playing some interesting moves here. They aren't objectively bad. You look at the eval and it's not shifting that much, but this is the second kind of way down the list opening move that black has played. So here c takes d5, bishop g5, and I think white's got some pretty good attacking, basically pretty good attacking chances. This bishop I don't think is super strong on b7. I think ideas like bishop to c2, queen to d3, threats on h7, h4, g4, g5. I think white's going to be able to launch a pretty effective attack here. What I might hope for the center to get really locked up and then not castle, play something like e2, and then attack aggressively on the king side. That's the plan that I might go to there. But I don't know. But yeah, h4 I think is the right general idea. Push this forward. Yeah, excellent. All right, so cool. So I don't know if this is sound or not. I don't know if the bishop is, I don't think that's, I think that sacrifice wasn't quite sound. But the fundamental thing that you're doing here really was right. You basically see that, this king safety is pretty poor. These pieces are on the other side and stuck over there. So your eyes are definitely correct in that you're supposed to be attacking the king side aggressively here. From a conceptual perspective, I totally get it. Think it was a smart idea. Want to I think pushing this basically pushing forward on the king side is clearly the correct plan for white. So nice. The other thing that I think is, the other thing that I think is important here is it really sort of comes down to tactical execution. Um, so first, the mandatory, whatever, study your tactics, work really hard on your tactics so you can do this really accurately. But the fundamental idea here was correct. Good call. So when you're setting up this attack, so basically, let's say the first reason bishop takes h7 shouldn't be played is because you can just sort of count it out and you see queen g6 and that sort of stops that threat. I think more tactical study will make that more visible to you, and then you don't play bishop takes h7 in that case. So I think tactical study is extremely important here, as it always is. But I think the idea was really good, and I want to give credit to that, and I think it's totally the right idea. So ideas like g4, g5, h5, knight e5, that's how to advance this attack. The only piece that I'm not super clear on how to do correctly is dealing with your king safety. But this is the right plan. This is the right middle game plan. This should give you a good position. Instead we can go through I'll try to go through really quickly. I'd probably advance with queen to c2, then either c4, in which case your king safety improves by a lot. Actually, you can play bishop to c2 and then king to d2 and then move your rook to g1 and just blast open the thing. So knight g5, right, is an idea. The issue with knight, so knight to g5 is kind of interesting. It responds g6 here, and because if h and knight h7 and you win in exchange. But on g6, you have to do a little bit more maneuvering to play h5. Knight g5 might still be a good idea because you play something like queen g4 and then you play h5 and then bust open the king side over here. So it does give you a hook. One of the things that's going to be very helpful in white executing this attack is creating a hook for attack for black. So that would be g6 in this case. So there is definitely valuable things going on with knight to g5. But I think that the most complete attack. So really good question, Subhan. I think there's definitely value in knight g5 because then g6 has to be played, and then you can not play on the next move, but after queen g4, play h5 and attack the g6 pawn. So you're looking at the right kind of stuff. The thing that I would say about this attack is, I think you should make it as complete as possible. So make sure that all of your pieces are overwhelming black here. Right now, black doesn't really have pieces set on defense. So if you can get 3 or 4 or 5 pieces from white, attacking aggressively on the king side, it's going to be really difficult for black to come up with sufficient defenders here. So queen to e2, I think, is the right play. Queen to e2 threatens this knight directly, and with queen to e2 threatening a6, c4, is maybe the best. I mean, the engine says it's the best move, but this is going to allow you to go with a much longer term attack. You can play king to d2, rook to g1, g4, g5, h5, and just sort of break open the king side using all of your pieces. That's the main. That's my idea. That's my idea on that one. So I think that's the way to play this. Is queen e2, and then on knight to c7, which is the alternative. Your king safety is a little worse than with c4. C4, you basically had the whole king side. You basically had your king very secure in the center. But here on king to d2, maybe pawn takes, maybe knight takes pawn after that. It's a little bit more unclear. Your biggest shortcoming in this position is your king safety. Maybe g4, maybe. But yeah, the king side attack is definitely the way to go. On c4, this position gets really good for you. I think this, the engine, I don't know, probably has some super accurate defense in mind, but practically speaking, I can guarantee that king to d2, rook to g1, g4, g5 is going to be pretty, is going to break this open. Yeah, no problem, DJ. I'll get to it after this stream. But yeah, no problem. So yeah, and basically, yeah, no, I mean, I think, so this bishop takes h7 was the right idea, but a tactical error. So I strongly suggest, doing a lot of puzzles. They'll really help you see, whether or not this attack was going to be sound or not. Um, and then after that, you're still continuing on with this attack, which I think is correct. I think this was a great play. Yeah, just really work on breaking open the king side with an attack, and that should be really good. Um, and then yeah, and then basically you end up getting the piece, right? Yeah, nice. Okay, so you play knight e6. H takes g7 was better. H takes g7, and you really, have an open king side here. This was really good. The whole concept was really good. I mean, especially at the level you're at, the amount of practical compensation you're getting from a complete king side attack is going to be really high. Like, even if these positions are reading as equal, like, the percentage of the percentage of players rated 1400 that will be able to navigate an aggressive complete attack is pretty low. So you're seeing a much, your practical comp is way better than the engine's comp here. With that in mind, so I think your plan here was really good, and I think at the end of the day, these are just tactical pickups. By the way, this is great, nicely done, and yeah, no, I think overall the real this is a great game. From a strategic perspective, I would have gone with the slightly slower attack, and this was so my attack was after bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, queen e2, g4, g5. White's looking solid. So yeah, bishop takes h7. This attack just wasn't. It was the right idea, but not tactically sound. My strategic improvement is to do something like play queen e2, play king d2, play rook g1, g4, g5, h5, h6, and basically, white will use all the pieces on the board to break open the king side and have an effective attack. By this point, the strategy sort of decided. It's all in tactical play. Your tactical play was good. You outplayed your opponent tactically and won. But at the end of the day, I just don't have much to say on this except, it's really just very important that you do your tactical weightlifting. Spend an hour or two a day for a couple months doing tactical puzzles. Maybe even quicker tactical puzzles, like relatively more simple positions. So like puzzle battle would be a good focus. But yeah, overall, your strategy was completely right. I would have taken exactly the same strategy. You identified that the king was, king safety was kind of poor there, and you effectively, you basically effectively broke it open. So very nice, good job, and the right idea. But the improvement there is really going to stem from tactical play. There were multiple inaccuracies. You can see on this game that there's just a lot of volatility. These types of ridges of, multiple points are something that, with tactical study, you're basically, ironing these ridges out of the analysis. Your whole game, the goal is to have the goal in what Grandmaster games look like. My games I wish looked more like this, but what Grandmaster games look like is, this kind of very stable, eval. There's not really a ton of movement either direction. So up until this point, and then with good enough tactical study, you will make the rest of your game have way less peaks and valleys here, and just look a lot more like this kind of flattened eval. And you really will. With good tactical vision, good tactical study, doing tons and tons of puzzles, you won't miss these 3 or 4 point mistakes. And if your opponent makes 3 or 4 point mistakes, they'll just, it'll just be a win for you. So that's my recommendation there. Just spend your time on tactical study. I think that'll provide great returns. Your strategic play, I think, was right. I think you identified the weaknesses for black and worked on executing them. And with tactical study, you'll be able to execute much more effectively. So overall, really interesting game. Thank you very much for sending it, the real. Cool, good attack. Yeah, tactics. There's a reason why that's the emote, and that is, I think, your quickest path to improving. It'll probably take a few months with a aggressive like training schedule, but it'll really help. I have no doubt in my mind. Anyways, thank you very much for sending the game, the real. Thank you all very much for being here on the stream. I'm gonna play a game against DJ Salchicha. Yeah, I can put this on the stream, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how long this game. If it's too long, if the time control is too long, then okay, cool. So it's a 3-minute game. Yeah, we can do this on the stream. That's fine. Cool. All right. Good luck. Good luck, DJ. Is it cool if I commentate this or sort of explain? Yeah. So I was thinking knight c3 and then yeah, e4. So this is big center versus flank opening, right? I'm gonna play bishop to d3, and I'm gonna so you know the subject of the first thing was how to play against the modern. This is the King's Indian defense. It has a lot of similarities to the modern with d6 and g6. But I think I'm going to try to attack pretty aggressively on the king side. Very tempted to play knight d5 here. But yeah, see, I mean, you know, white basically gets big center control against. I mean, it's true for both the King's Indian and the modern and Perk. White gets big center control, and then you know, works to try to get his pieces in the right place for a kingside attack. So yeah. I'm probably going to have to play d5 next move. Yeah, I think I might as well just lock up the center and then start attacking on the king side. I could have played bishop takes c5 there. That knight is posted pretty well. Yeah, so I'll castle queenside in this game. But yeah, that's I think castling queenside often improves your. Hey, thank you very much for the follow, RPD. Thank you. But yeah, g4 castles queenside, and basically I think there's going to be some pretty good attacks on the king side. Castling queenside, I think is, you know, it tends to be better in the Sicilian, or no, sorry, it tends to be better in the Italian game than the Sicilian. In the Italian game, in the Sicilian, you can attack actually pretty frequently with, you know, with moves like, so basically in the Italian game, you can attack, or in the Sicilian, you can attack after having castled kingside. You still probably are better attacking if you've castled queenside. But the issue is, so if you've castled queenside in the Sicilian, you will be able to launch kingside attacks better, but you'll be subject to attack on the c file. If you castle queenside in the Italian game, you're basically fine. So I would say castling queenside is probably always good for launching your kingside attacks, but it's less double-edged in the Italian game than it is in the Sicilian. And in this particular game, which, you know, the c file and the queenside was closed, I felt comfortable castling queenside here. Yeah, so yeah, no, I mean, you know, it's always double-edged. It's double-edged in the the Sicilian, because black has the open c file in the Sicilian. Hmm. Uh, it's probably some tactic I'm missing here, right? Yeah, I think this is the best tactic. I was trying to come up with something really fancy, but I think that one's cool. All right, good game. Thank you very much for the challenge, DJ Salchicha. I yeah, a very interesting game. We can go over it for a second because I want to make sure that we take a look. I'm not sure I did that game perfectly, but yeah, let's take a look. Just since this is, this is a good opportunity to take a look. Good game, no, good game, DJ Salchicha for sure. Thank you. Um, so bishop to d3. Okay, so White's gonna have a big spatial advantage. Oh yeah, right. Sorry, I forgot about I forgot about that. You're right about that though. Um, so yeah, So basically, in this position, h4 is considered to be an overextension by White. I don't know how you would capitalize on this. H6 seems to be best, but bishop e3, b6. Yeah, d5 I think is probably best for White. But yeah, this is an example of a good. I think this is sort of a good instruction for playing against the modern. Um, but yeah, so okay, interesting. So yeah, let's take a look at the I think the most interesting part of this game was just the opening there. Um, uh, H4 is an overextension by White. So yeah, basically I overextended by playing H4. I guess probably D5 comes first. Maybe Queen to D2 here. But H4, which forces the bishop back to E3, is considered to be good. And the correct follow-up for Black, I think, is this knight to G4 move, which is sort of true and sort of makes sense, right? This knight goes to G4. White's best move is probably to play Queen to D2, but this attack is sort of getting diffused. With Queen D2, knight takes E3, pawn takes. I mean, basically the pieces are, that bishop was a key part of that attack on the king side. And if you trade off the knight, which you were forcing, which you successfully forced, right? Well, I mean, I don't know if it's, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of these kind of quiet flank openings. I play the Grunfeld, to be honest. Yeah, no. So I play the flank opening. Flank openings and end up in a situation with flank openings where sorry, I don't play flank openings. I play the Grunfeld against d4. When I play the Grunfeld against d4, I get an aggressive attack. The position's relatively open, and Black has reasonably competitive control of the center. I also like the semi-Slav for pretty much the same reasons. Flank openings, I'm just not sold on. That includes the King's Indian defense. I just think you're always kind of compacted against your opponent who has a big center, and if you and if that happens, then it's tricky. It's hard to know exactly how to. If your opponent has a big, yeah. I mean, no, I don't know about King's Indians, but specifically King's Indian, I know to be, I certainly consider that to be more solid than, oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about it. Honestly, I don't usually play Blitz on the stream, but yeah, at least we can go over and look at this game a little bit. Anyways, I'm just not sold on flank openings. I play the Grunfeld. I play open games in the semi-Slav as Black, or I aim for more open games, and the semi-Slav is Black, and that seems to work pretty well. I find these flank openings too anti-fundamental for me. But anyways, thank you very much for playing the game, DJ Salchicha, and yeah, I really appreciate you everybody here and everybody for hanging out on the stream. It's very nice of you guys to all send games in and be supportive of the stream. So thanks very much for all that. And the next stream is at 6:05 p.m. Eastern today. And we will be covering the Note Boom Queen's Gambit. That will be cool. Yeah, sure, we can play one R Paradox. Yeah, if you challenge me, I got a few more minutes, but this has to be the last one just because I have to get some homework done. But yeah, sure. If you match me R Paradox, I can play one. I can play one more. Is it okay if I sort of like talk during it? You know, honestly, I don't know that opening theory. Someone recommended it, so I'm keeping, you know, I'm going to play the Note or Gambit and learn it. It's one of those openings where I don't really know it super well, so it's super helpful for other people to send it to me. Let's see. Because I was getting spammed. That one's the 10-minute follow is I was getting spammed pretty hard. Like people would come in and like post like profanity and that kind of stuff. So I was just like, yeah, whatever. I want to keep things as family friendly as possible, right? So I didn't really want to mess around with randomness. I was getting some. I don't know. Oh, sorry. Am I not in live? I'm not in live, am I? Oh, there you go. Here, send it again. Sorry, my fault. There you go. That was my fault. All right. What opening would you like me to play? Since I forgot the last time, I can play E5, D5, or I can play all. I can play whatever first move. You should pick which one. C5, D5, or E5. Okay, King's Pawn. Let's do it. All right, but this is the last game, and then I have to go and work. Sometimes I play Queen F6 here. I know that's probably objectively not that good. Thanks for hanging out, RPD. But I was getting spammed, so I didn't want to. I'm keeping the 10 minutes. Unfortunately, it seemed necessary. Okay. All right, good game, X Paradox. Thank you very much for hanging out, and yeah, I'm always happy to play. I honestly, I don't think I'll do much more playing on the stream. To be completely honest, I'd rather play. I'd rather keep the stream to be free lessons. But yeah, no, thank you very much for sending the game R Paradox, and yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks all for sending your games and for contributing to the stream. And yeah, next stream is at 6:05 p.m. Eastern tonight. Thanks a lot for being here, and hopefully I'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Bye.